Showtime! The Willits Community Theater would like to present Speakeasy VII 2020. Before we begin, I would like to thank our sponsors, Les Schwab Tires of Willits, who have been sponsoring our programs since 2007, and I would also like to thank NC Financial Group, who has been sponsoring us since 2017. We really appreciate that support and the support from all of our community members, especially during this special year when we are doing our program virtually. I think you're going to find we have a wide variety of performers. We've done it under different circumstances and in various locations, and the stories you hear may or may not be true, but we hope you will enjoy the show. Thank you so much. Carma 2020. I am in love. Yes, I'm in love. I'm in love with Kermit the Kia. He is my daughter's ex, and I have secretly lusted for Kermit for a couple of years, and now he's mine, all mine. He is a Kia soul. I love the fact that he too is an old soul. He has made driving fun again. You see, I have a lot of karma, and that's karma with a big letter C. The karma began when I was learning to drive. My father taught me, and he insisted that I learn to drive his little 1952 Studebaker. It had a stick shift, and learning to coordinate the clutch and those 4 gears and the brakes was a challenge. During one of our practice sessions drive around Rancho Park, I was turning a corner, probably too fast, when all of a sudden there was a horrible noise in the back. And I panicked, lost control of the car, and before I knew it, I was up and over the curb, heading right for the tennis courts before my father grabbed the wheel and safely rescued us. Anyway, it turns out there was a full set of weights and barbells in the trunk. A surprise gift for my brother for Christmas. But it sounded like the whole rear end was falling off. As was the custom in 1955, I went down on my 16th birthday and took my driving test. And I got my license that day. I was so excited and so happy. 1 week later, I got my first ticket. It was on my first night out on my own, driving to a social meeting at my church. I wasn't even 4 blocks away from home when I was pulled over and cited for not coming to a complete stop at the stop sign when turning right. My tears did not impress the policeman. I had to go to court, and I got a stern warning. A few weeks later, I was driving my parents' car on Culver Boulevard through the bean fields to Playa del Rey, where I worked at the Westport Beach Club. There never was any traffic, and there was no posted speed limits. There were fields on each side of the road. At one point, there was a 1/4 mile drag strip marked off on the road. Now was my chance to find out what my folks' 49 forest green Pontiac with the hydromatic transmission could do in the quarter. I stopped at the starting line. I floored the gas pedal. The car leaped forward, and before I knew it, I found myself spinning around in the bean fields. I wasn't even late for work. A few more weeks passed, and I got my second ticket. I ran a red light right on Santa Monica Boulevard in front of the police station, going to meet my boyfriend where I shouldn't be going. This time, the judge, with the encouragement of my father, threw the book at me. He suspended my license for 6 weeks. He shook his finger and he told me if I got another ticket before I was 18, that I would lose my license until I was 21. That was the day that I learned to drive like a little old lady, and I never ever got another ticket. Next, I drove my mother's turquoise and white 1955 Chevy Bel Air, but none of these cars was really mine, and it didn't matter too much because I had boyfriends, some of them with very, very cool cars. When I got together with my boyfriend, Bill, he was driving a 1959 Chevrolet Bel Air hardtop. And he also had a minivan, a VW minivan with a sunroof that he used for work. And when he went out with his buddies out to the desert to just, party, guess which car we went in while we were dating? When we decided to get married, we bought a blue 1960 VW Bug. It did not have a gas gauge, but when you ran out of gas, you flipped a little switch and you had 1 more mile. And I would always turn the mirror to remind me that I needed to buy gas. Well, of course, the next time I got in the car, I would straighten the mirror, and then I would forget to buy the gas, and it was not just once that I ran out of gas. Anyway, we had the chance to buy a 1961 VW Bug in Germany. And so when we got that one back, the best part about it was that it had a gas gauge. We used to drive around, and I sort of cringe when I think about it, with the baby back in the boot of the VW, and we never thought about car seats. Instead, the whole back seat was just a playpen. Well, during the 70s and the 80s, I drove, and this again was before seatbelts, I drove a great big Ford van. And we would drive back and forth between the San Fernando Valley and Beverly Hills, and the kids would just be packed in the back of the car, and they'd all be back there surfing. They were just standing up there and balancing, and they thought that was great fun. And my daughter claims today that that's why she has such good balance. Well, in 1979, we moved to Mendocino County. We live in a redwood forest, and we drive a winding, not very well maintained road to town. The last mile to our house is dirt, so we're always dealing with dust and mud and snow. So one morning, I was going down to town and I was going to teach an art class, and several people warned me, now be careful, that little one-way bridge down there is really icy and dangerous today. So, as I got down to the bridge, I slowed down, I stopped, I lined myself up, and I started out, and before I knew it, ever so slowly, I took out the first railing. And slowly, I couldn't correct, I took out the second railing. And by the time I reached the third railing, I knew that I was going over and over and over again until I landed upside down on the edge of the stream. I was hanging by my seatbelt, and there was jagged glass and art supplies everywhere. And I was a little disoriented, but I was able to unhook myself, turn off the engine, climb up the window, crawl up the bank, and I didn't have a scratch on me. Well, in 2005, I got a used white PT Cruiser, and it was the first car that was really mine. He was my first love. And I planned to drive him forever. But one day, I took a friend home, and coming out of her blind intersection driveway, I was T-boned, a word that I just learned that day. And the PT spared me from injury, and yet the poor baby was my second total. This time, my daughter said, okay, I've done some research, and I think that the safest car for you is a brand new 2010 Honda Fit. And I think it should be bright yellow, because then people can see you and they will get out of your way. Well, it had lots of airbags, and so I felt, you know, in a backup camera. So I thought, well, this probably is going to be a nice, safe car. Well, I did like the heated seats, but I have to admit, I never was able to use the camera effectively, and I got dings on it before I knew it, always backing out of the driveway. And I had the first few fixed because I just didn't want to use the insurance, but I had them fixed and I wanted to keep my car looking nice. But after a while, I had dings everywhere, and I just decided that's the way it's going to be. We just never were a good fit, and we never, ever bonded. Well, just recently, I had decided that I was just resigned, that that's the way it was going to be. But when my daughter told me that I could have Kermit, I felt my heart soar. I could tell that Kermit is the real deal. Kermit's the one that I've been waiting for. I could go on and on about his wonderful features and how well he handles. But anyway, I do miss the CD player. But hey, this is 2020 and I'm ready for some good karma.
I'm Herr, and this is Romeos. When the separating pustules had a gig at the Blue Bonnet in Adobe Walls, Pony Killer County's only honky-tonk, I always broke out my national guitar. You maybe heard of them even if you've never seen one. Remember Paul Simon flying down to Graceland and seeing the Mississippi River shining like one of them? Nationals are shiny. Nickel-plated steel all over, no wood showing, though they're shaped like a regular guitar. Reason I used it when the pustules were playing the blue was because of the stage lighting there. That guitar was just perfect for casting reflections. I'd single out a good-looking stray at ringside and manipulate that old national to illuminate the lady in a sparkle of rainbow colors. Kind of get her attention, you might say. That night we finished the last set with Good Night Ladies like always. And while putting the band's gear away, I caught the eye of the likely I had targeted and raised my eyebrows as an invitation to linger. She got the idea, and after I packed my trusty national away, I went over to where she's standing by the snooker table alongside the big old Wurlitzer jukebox. Before I could say howdy, she asked me, "You always do that to the ladies ringside?" I said, "You mean overwhelm them with my musical chops coupled with my trustworthy demeanor that accompanies my boyish smile?" "No," she said, "I mean blind them with that goddamn national guitar flashing in their face." My boyish smile shifted to sheepish, but I did the manly thing and I copped to it and I said, "You know, being a separating pustule may look pretty glamorous, but you're the beauty of the bar tonight, and I just wanted to highlight you. If in that process I blinded you to my many stellar qualities, my apologies. I'm Willie." She said, "I'm Lorene. That kind of bullshit ever worked for you, Willie?" I said, "Well, it's got us engaged in a manner of speaking, and we only just met." "Well, this is going to be a short engagement," she said. "I hardly got time for more than a howdy. I got to find a place to spend the night. My pickup broke down just outside of Adobe Walls." So I did the manly thing and I said, "Come on home with me." She went into this hip shot stance and crossed her arms and commenced to tap on the corner of her mouth with her finger and said, just what you propose we do once we get there." Well, I'm a little dry from being on stage, so we could bring home a six-pack of Lone Star long necks and get to know one another. And just what kind of sleeping arrangements you got in mind, she wanted to know. I said, well, I got this brand new waterbed, hardly broke in, that you're invited to experience. She said, that mean you got a lazy boy you can bed down in another room? Adding a little more stress than she needed to on those last words. I said, if it comes to that, I can handle it. I've been rejected before. It's not rejection, Willie. I'm just not that kind of girl. But I will take you up on your offer. When we got to the trailer park, I pulled my F-150 in alongside my double wide and said, "Here's your new home, Lorene." I can't say she was awestruck by her surroundings, but she didn't have much to say. After a cursory inspection of the bedroom and head, though, she deemed both acceptable, and we retired to the living room. We popped a couple of Lone Stars and commenced to getting to know one another. Turns out she's a barrel rider come to town for the annual Top of Texas Rodeo. I was about to ask her where's her horse, but thought better of it. Gal wants to be a little mysterious. I'm okay with that. Gives a man the latitude to be a little mysterious himself. Gives him some maneuvering room, if you get my drift. I'd like to say we progressed to the snuggling stage, but no such luck. She did give me a good night hug, though, before going to bed. There's two kinds of hugs. There's your teepee hug, where you lean into one another, kind of like an A-frame. And then there's a more intimate pee-pee hug. Lorene's wasn't encouraging in between, but like I say, wasn't an invitation into the bedroom. I was just bunking down on my lazy boy, wondering how she knew I had one, when I remembered my Romeos were in the bedroom alongside the waterbed. So I slipped my skivvies back on, tapped on the bedroom door. She said, "What do you want?" "My Romeos." "Your what?" "My Romeos, my bed slippers. They're by the bed. I'll just slip in and fetch them." "No need for that," she said. "I'll hand them out to you." When she did, all I could see was her arm holding out my Romeos like a couple of dead rats. She said, "I got news for you, Willie. These aren't Romeos. You ask me, they're brothel creepers, and they ain't gonna work with me." She's up early the next morning making coffee, and when she brought me a cup, I was still sacked out on my lazy boy. She said, "I'm pleased to see you didn't have a pile of dirty dishes in your sink. That speaks well of a man." I said, "Yeah, one of man's great fears is he'll wind up with a slatternly woman who leaves the kitchen sink full of dirty dishes. That can be a real nuisance. She's taking her sweet time in the john, and you're wanting to take a pee, so what's a man to do? In fact, you ever wonder why you take a pee when you're really leaving one?" She said, "Actually, I haven't. But I'll leave you to ponder that, Willie. I got to run and get my pickup truck dealt with." She picked up my keys from the coffee table where I'd shucked them out of my Bluebell Wranglers before retiring and said, "How about I take your wheels? I'll be back before you need to go anywhere. That is, assuming your offer of a bed wasn't just for a one-night stand." I said, "Okay, but remember, grand theft pickup truck is a capital offense in Texas." Thinking at the time I was just joking. But more than anything, hoping one thing would lead to another with this gal named Lorene.
I've been cheated, been mistreated. When will I be loved?
Dick Clark and Me. 1960s, American Bandstand. Who doesn't remember American Bandstand with Dick Clark? Dick Clark was dubbed America's oldest teenager. I adored Dick Clark. He had such cute, boyish looks. We all know he was older than us, but he related to us through our music. I would watch every day after school, and I learned all the lyrics to all the songs he played. I want to sing on Bandstand. Fast forward 1970s. I auditioned for and won the part to be a contestant on the $10,000 Pyramid Show, hosted by Dick Clark. He spoke to all the contestants before the show, and when he came to me, I told him how much I loved him all these years. He laughed and said, "Would you repeat that on the air?" I declined. I was so embarrassed. They taped a week's worth of shows in one day, 3 in the morning, starting at 9, break for lunch for an hour, and then the rest in the afternoon. I was on for 3 days. I discovered that after lunch, my brain slowed down, and so I lost the next round. Pyramid was a game that required quick thinking. I won $1,000 and some very nice parting gifts. One of my treasures is a framed autograph. "Dear Gloria, thanks for everything, Dick Clark." Fast forward 1980s. Living out one of my dreams, I was singing with a band in a small Italian restaurant on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, New York. The band was behind the bar facing the door, and the restaurant was in the back. I saw the door open one night, and in walked Dick Clark. He was with his wife and another couple, and they headed for the restaurant in the back, a small room with 6 tables where the owner prepared different foods every night. I was beside myself. Dick Clark here, where I am, and I'm singing. Oh my God, American Bandstand, here I come. They were there for a few hours and a few bottles of wine. As the waitress pointed out, every time she purchased another bottle from the bar, another bottle of wine for Dick Clark's table. The band and I were playing Stump the Bar. We would sing a song and ask questions about that song. Who wrote that song? Who recorded that song? What year was it recorded? One of the songs was "When Will I Be Loved," written in 1958 by Phil Everly, and recorded by the Everly Brothers. It had a slow, steady country beat. Re-recorded in the 70s by Linda Ronstadt, it had a definite rock and roll sound. The question posed to the bar was, who originally recorded this song? The band and I then went into the Linda Ronstadt version. As I was singing, I saw Dick Clark and his party come out from the restaurant, and they stopped and listened to the rest of the song. "I'm gonna be on Bandstand." The song ended and the people called out from the bar, "Linda Ronstadt," in response to the question. No, it was not Linda Ronstadt. So I turned the lights and the microphone to Dick Clark, and I asked, "Dick Clark, who originally recorded that song?" I thought if anyone would know the correct answer, it would be him. When I called out his name, there was a hush over the bar. Heads turned. All eyes were on Dick Clark. And Dick Clark shrugged his shoulders and made a face as if to say, "I don't know." And there went my chance for Bandstand. The end. Rest in peace, Dick.
In the late 1970s, I lived in an artists' co-op in San Francisco known as Project One. Project One was an outlandish place. A large industrial building south of Market with many loft spaces of various sizes. My loft mate Esther, a strapping 6-foot man and a very popular Middle Eastern dancer, and I shared one of the larger spaces. We had a small theater in our loft, and several other rooms, our bedrooms, and a special room for Esther's psilocybin mushrooms, which he had grown from mycelium that he had purchased through the mail from a mysterious character by the name of Mr. Hongo. Psychedelics never really agreed with me. The only time I ever took one of Esther's psilocybin mushrooms was with my friend Helga. And while we were tripping, we got on a plane and flew to Los Angeles. We ended up, as I recall, wandering through Hollywood. I think we ran into a friend of Helga's. We all went to a gay bar, dancing, and then Helga and I got back on a plane, flew back to San Francisco. Although interesting and oddly unforgettable, it was not an experience I needed to repeat. Project One was peopled by fascinating characters, such as Narcissus. Narcissus, a brilliant maker of truly magnificent stained glass windows. There was Chucky, a pianist and painter. Richard and Philomena, filmmakers and graphic artists. Philomena was a brilliant businesswoman, and she had a big wardrobe of 50s drag. Her husband, Richard, was a cross-dresser who everybody referred to as Big Linda. Big Linda, Esther, and Chucky had a gang, a graffiti gang known as the TV Guides. In the building there was also this very good-looking guy who lived a few loft spaces down from us. I was never exactly sure what his art was until he moved out. He left behind many nude photos of himself, at which time I realized he was an erotic model. Very talented. A beautiful French woman, Christiane, lived upstairs. She and I had a very French relationship, learned a lot from her. She was a very talented sculptor. Turns out her former father-in-law had been my psychiatrist when I was in college in Portland many years earlier. Small world. Everyone had their interesting story. Well, it was San Francisco in the 1970s. Then there was Houdini. Houdini was a large, energetic woman, singer. But I think Houdini's real art was annoying people. She had definitely turned that into an art form. And somehow I really liked her. She introduced me to the music of Grace Jones and somehow got me into the Christmas choir at Glide Memorial Church, a mostly black church. I'll never forget the ecstatic, warm magic of swaying and singing in that choir. Well, one evening, Esther and I had dinner for my new friend, Joe, and his friend from Milwaukee, Charlie. Charlie was a nurse visiting San Francisco, and we were looking forward to his visit. Just as we were sitting down to dinner, the door to our loft burst open, and in ran Houdini screaming, "There's a riot in the hallways! Grab a gun or a bat and get out here right now!" Well, who could resist an invitation like that? Charlie looked shocked and perhaps a little scared. Joe looked at me somewhat confused. Esther grabbed a broom, and I grabbed our Chinese vegetable knife, kind of like a meat cleaver. And we ran out into the hall, followed by reluctant but curious Joe and Charlie. There was indeed a riot going on in the halls of Project One. The owner had wanted to get the building cleared out for some time, and he had sent some ominous, menacing thug types to throw the artist residence out. Well, they were not prepared for the reception they got. Dozens of angry artists armed with furniture, wood carving tools, some very scary paintbrushes with long handles, and rope, which was later used to lasso the intruders and tie them up. Our loft became the infirmary where the bleeding and wounded residents, and even one thug, were brought. Charlie kicked in and began bandaging and making makeshift splints to the unexpected patients. I must say, he really kicked in an emergency. After the intruders were injected onto the street, ejected, that is, onto the street, Charlie, Joe, and I sat down, and Esther served us a lovely vegan dinner. Sometimes I miss the spirit and the creativity of the old days. San Francisco is just not the same kind of place anymore.
Back in the early 90s, my husband, Walter, and I were living in an old log cabin down the hill from our garden. We raised chickens and ducks at the time for their eggs, and they were also very good at keeping down the insect population. But they also attracted the attention of bears that were pretty prevalent on our mountain range at the time. And one bear in particular was coming very often, and in the mornings when we go up, we would see that there was havoc wreaked among our bears. It was very depressing. Eventually, Walter called the fish and game man and asked permission to shoot the bear. It was granted, and Walter began to keep vigil in the raspberry patch at the bottom of our garden, which gave him a good view of the chicken pen. Naturally, the bears never came when he was waiting there for them. And so, frustrated and tired, he came down one evening for a shower before dinner. I had some chili and cornbread warming on our pot-bellied stove, and he took a shower and was toweling off on the deck while I was preparing dinner, getting it ready to serve. Suddenly, "By God, here comes the bear," he shouted. I ran out to have a look, and there it was, coming down the hill towards our cabin. "Quick, get me the gun," he said, handing me the towel but not taking his eyes off the bear. I ran inside to retrieve his grandfather's gun, and, stark naked, he took aim and made the shot. The bear fell down, but I was sure he couldn't have got it at such a great distance. So I told him to put some clothes on, and I would drive him up for him to make the coup de grace. He pulled on some sweatpants, and I drove as fast as I could up the hill, stopped by the bear, which was quite still. Nevertheless, we approached very carefully, and Walter was ready to take the killing shot, which wasn't necessary because it appeared that his original shot had gone right through the bear's neck into the jugular. An amazing shot at almost 300 yards and stark naked, my hero. But it was sad. We looked at this magnificent animal with its thick, sleek, shiny coat, and it was an amazing and unique opportunity to stroke that coat. It was early spring, so I gathered some daffodils to put on the bear's body, along with some of the chicken parts that he'd left behind, just to remind us on why it had to be killed. Walter called the fish and game man after dinner, and he said he'd be out in a couple of days to inspect. He actually came 3 days later and walked around the bear, looked at it very carefully, and then told Walter to cut off its paws and extract the gallbladder. "I'll do no such thing," said my husband. "Why on earth would you want to desecrate this magnificent animal?" "Well, we've got a sting operation going on in San Francisco's Chinatown," he explained. "Something to do with good luck, good health, and sexual prowess." "I'm not doing it," said my husband. "Well, what are you going to do with the body then?" asked the warden. "Well, we're going to bury it, of course," said my husband. "Well, I'm at least going to take the paws," said the warden. "Oh, no, you're not. Get off my property right now," my husband was now yelling. He could be quite fearsome at times. So the warden went reluctantly, saying, "I'll be back in a year or so to check out the carcass and make sure you haven't used the teeth or the claws for jewelry." Jewelry? It hadn't even occurred to us. My husband escorted the man off the property and came back with his tractor. It took us about an hour to haul the carcass into the bucket of the tractor with ropes and cables. The bucket was 6 feet long and the bear overhung it at both ends. It was so large. We drove up to the top of the mountain and buried the poor animal. The warden never did call back, and we resolved never to contact him again.
Last Wednesday night, a friend called to tell me a story that she'd seen on Facebook. "Mom," it started out, "Mom, I saw this beautiful rainbow of color ahead of me. And I saw people standing there, and balls and toys and some animals, and I moved forward. I kept looking back, but you got further and further behind me and more faded. You've always been right by my side, Mom. But I walked on across the bridge by myself. And when I got to the other side, there were all these dogs with wings. And they put a pair on me and said that I would now be your angel dog, and that I could look after you, and that I would help you find another dog who would love you as much as I." By then, obviously, I'd realized what the story was about, and I was sobbing. My lost shadow. The shadow that my deceased husband and I went to the shelter to rescue in September of 2012. We drove all the way to Maryville, about 5 hours from Mendocino. Her name was Shadow, 134 pounds, German Shepherd, St. Bernard. We'd hesitated a little bit because of the size, but finally I made the arrangements. I told John we'd come on this Saturday after Labor Day, and John, the guy running the shelter, said he was going to go down to Petco with some dogs, but not Shadow. And he said he'd be back up at the shelter about 2 o'clock. We arrived at 2:20. And there in this big, beautiful run of a cage was Shadow. And Floyd and John got her out, and we all went and sat in the office waiting room. And as was our wont, I always did the paperwork. So I was talking to John about the details. Floyd was sitting on the floor with Shadow. It wasn't 3-4 minutes, and a family of 4 walked in. And the man said to Floyd, "Is that your dog?" And Floyd said, "Looks like it is." John said, "Well, we have lots of other dogs. Out to the kennel, you can go look at some other dogs." They weren't gone 3 minutes. And they came back, glanced again at Shadow, sort of wistfully, and left. It was clear they had come for Shadow. And if we had been 5 minutes later, we wouldn't have been happy enough to have her in our life. That was the good news. We got home, had a couple days, but then the bad news was I got the news 3 days later that my mother's favorite cousin, who'd become my second mother for the 25 years since my mother had died, that Terry also had died up in Oregon. Floyd didn't want to go with me, so I set out alone, and my very last words to Floyd were, "We don't know this dog, and she does not know us. She's not used to the surroundings. Keep her on a tight leash and keep an eye on her." When I came home 4 days later, late at night, I knew that hadn't happened. Floyd was sitting very sad and forlorn looking at the dining room table. Shadow had run away. I was angry. He told people I would be, but I pulled myself together, and the next day I put up posters in as many places as I could. The town bulletin boards. I didn't even have a picture of Shadow. We'd had her such a short time. And I'm not a cell phone picture addict. So that night, luckily, a friend called me and said, "Nancy, I saw your posters. I think I saw your dog on Facebook." I don't do Facebook either. But she sent me the link, and sure enough, it was our Shadow. She'd run through the woods to a house not too far away. They posted how much they loved her, how friendly she'd been, but then she ran away from them, got in the clutches of the Humane Society and taken to doggy jail. And luckily not hit by a car or kidnapped. So I called the kennel the next week, and they were closed Monday or Tuesday, but I went over the minute they opened on Wednesday. They took me to the very last row of cages. I was losing hope, but there was our Shadow. They brought her forward to the front desk, and in her inimitable style, well, I had to pay the $434 for her 3-night stay at the doggy hotel. She had her paws up on the counter, looking out at everybody in the waiting room, as if to say, "There's got to be something I can do. What can I do to help you?" When I paid, put her in the back of the SUV, had to go get fuel to get back across the hills to Mendocino. She jumped from the back of the SUV across seats to the front. She was pretty graceful with that big body that I was trying at that point to get down toward the 120 we kept. But she was sitting there on the console when I got back in the car from getting fuel, and she put that nose up in my face, licking me, definitely saying, "Mom, I'm sorry, I won't run away again." And she kept that promise for the next 22 months until Floyd died in July of 14. And she is absolutely the only thing that saved me when Floyd died. The mornings I would turn my face to the wall and say, "No, I cannot get up, I can't do this." That face would come up on my neck, my face. She'd lick me, she'd say, "No, sorry, there's another plan. I need a walk and I need food." And when I fed her, I decided that maybe I should eat something. So she got me through it, and she kept her promise to stay home for about 10 months after Floyd died. And then one day, when our friend Mark was there, he'd done some repair of the fence, Floyd's fence that had blown down in the January storm. We were walking the edge of the property along the fence, and all of a sudden, I thought I had a tight enough hand on that leash, but no. Shadow smelled something. She pulled away from me on into the woods, and Mark was amazed how quickly she got away. I was amazed. I saw right then that I hadn't completely understood the name Shadow. I'd been thinking Jung's shadow, you know, that part of ourselves that we can't see, all that love and kindness that I certainly didn't have, that Shadow had. But no, the other part of that name was that she could run away like a phantom within seconds, even as big as she was. There were other instances of trying to pull away, but I managed to keep her close, and so we aged together. Last December, December 19th, Shadow turned 77, 78 with great aplomb, no problem at all. And I knew I had the big 7-0 coming up this spring. We were using a ramp to get into the car. We were doing adequate injections, which were helping her arthritis. And much as Shadow hated it, I had a big Velcro belt that I put around her backside with a suitcase handle so I could lift her up if those back legs gave out from under her. She tolerated it. And we were walking 3 to 4 miles a day in 3, 4, 1 mile segments, and everything was fine until April 25th, and fate blew all our plans. Just walking down the straight of our lane, all of a sudden, Shadow whelped, a louder noise than I had ever heard from my precious quiet dog. And she couldn't walk. I laid her down in the nearest driveway just to hoping I'd find a splinter or a rock or something embedded in her paw, but no. It was the longest 4/10 of a mile I had ever walked. She wanted to keep lying down, and I kept pulling her up and saying, Shadow, we've got to get home and figure out what this is. Turned out she had broken her front paw, a clean break. So we held hope. The vet had to send text to lift her into the back of my car, but we both held hope. And for the first couple of weeks, Shadow used the strength of those front paws to motivate herself forward as best she could while we held the backside. But by the 3rd week, it was clear that she was tired, that she was done. And the vet started to talk to me about releasing her. But I had the 15th of May coming up with what would have been the 30th anniversary of Floyd's and my marriage, and then the 18th, that big 7-0 birthday. And if you didn't know Shadow, you might think I'm just being silly, but she knew. She knew those days were coming, and she knew not to inflict extra tears and sorrow on me before those days. So she held on through my birthday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday, she made it ever clear that she was done, that this was it. A friend dug a really righteous grave for her within eyeshot of my favorite dining room table and my living room chair. And those last 22 hours, Shadow would turn to the kitchen and me to eat, but then she'd pull herself right around and had her nose almost glued to the slider, looking out toward that grave. No doubt she was ready. And the final ceremony in the woods with the Tex had become our friends by then. It was beautiful. I was okay. I held myself together that first day, but when I awoke the second day, it was just like that second day after Floyd died. I wanted to turn to the wall and say, I will not ever get up again. I will never move again. This is too much. And I sobbed. Yes, I had friends to help talk me through it, a yoga teacher who talked me through deep grief breathing, but I was disconsolate. The only thing that's comforted me in these last months was reminding myself that it's the best for her, that she is happy, that she is free. I hope running somewhere, and I hope she's reconnected to Floyd and our other 6 dogs. But still, there's just been a pit of grief. And when a friend suggested I do this monologue in honor of Shadow and our love, another friend said, are you sure you can do it? And I said, it will be cathartic. But it's turned out to be more healing than I ever would have predicted, because last night, Shadow came to me in the first dream that I've had of her since she died. And we were walking near a pool, and she jumped off into this deep, clear pool that then led to a bigger body of deep, deep blackish blue water. And Shadow's front paws almost were like wings on her shoulders. And she swam away gracefully and powerfully. I was a little anxious she was getting so far from me, but this time, I did not yell out, stop, come back to me. I can't say that to her anymore.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Pearl.
So tell me what's up with you. What's going on?
I love to have deep talks. I do not like to have casual conversation. Oh, I went to Mariposa today, and I bought some Brussels sprouts, and also on my list, bananas, gluten-free pizza, peaches, pears, zucchini, goat butter, goat cheese, and Mary's oven-roasted turkey slices.
Do you remember those vitamin C's from Harvest Bounty and Willits? My mouth would salivate in advance before eating them. I loved those tangy, sweet candies that promised good health and tasted so good. I remember sitting on those stools at the counter in the back of the store and having vitamin C's, followed by chili, served by Dick or Maggie Graham. Yum.
Speaking of yum, I've always loved horses. As a child, they were saviors to me. After 4 years in boarding school, I finally lived in a neighborhood, in a house, and I made myself a stick horse. I found a broom handle. I painted brown spots on it. I took a belt that I had that had little plastic jewels in different colors on it and fastened it to the end of the stick. The end of the stick horse, which was supposed to be its head. And I rode it around my neighborhood every day, all day. I think I called it paint.
When I close my eyes in the sun, the inside of my eyelids become painted movie screens, and colors in tangerine, fuchsia, neon green stripes, and pixelated blue project themselves in a wild paisley kaleidoscopic frenzy.
Speaking of frenzy, when I meet a couple, I always ask them, at what point did you know this person was going to mean a lot to you? That they meant a lot to you already? At what point did you recognize, wow, I love this person?
I miss my dad every day. Sometimes, when we improvise, I think we channel his sense of humor and laughter. Sometimes I feel him there, encouraging us to feel levity and light. He says, it's also okay to cry, but let's practice moving in between these worlds and letting them exist at the same time. A quote that I remember Dad sharing that I loved, that he loved, was a part of the Khalil Gibran poem, or quote rather, "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding." Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. I feel you in my fingers. I feel you in my toes. Love is all around us, and everywhere it shows.
My horse was sold before I had a chance to say goodbye to him. And I spent every day for 1 year grieving and crying over him. And then I thought, maybe I can find him and see how he's doing. So I went to see where he was and who owned him, and I saw how well he was doing. A young boy had bought him, the family had bought him, and he looked good. He remembered me. He whinnied when I called his name. I never cried about him after that.
I used to want to be taller. I wanted the operation where they break your legs in half to add metal rods between your bones to elongate your legs. But now I'm really content with my height, and it's way less distance to fall to the ground this way.
I'm remembering when I was about 7, and I didn't know it, but this boy had a crush on me. I went to school near my house. Well, it was about a mile away. I walked to school and home every day. And I was beginning to walk home one day after school, and this boy on his bike rode by me and he spit on me. And I was so hurt and embarrassed, and all the girls started clapping and saying, Linda, Linda, he likes you, he's in love with you. And I said, but he just spit on me. And they said, that's how boys show they like you. It was my first introduction that sometimes when people want your attention, sometimes they are mean and hostile rather than warm and friendly.
How would you describe love?
Oh, wow. Love is caring. Love is being concerned and showing it for another person or animal. I had lots of animals growing up. Where the well-being of that person or creature is of paramount importance in your life. Being kind and generous, interested and curious, listening well, being truthful. Truth is very important in loving someone. Truth-telling. Oh, and timing. Timing is really important. You taught me that, Pearl. When you say something, it's important. When you bring something up, to be considerate for what the other person is doing or might be feeling, what they're going through. Not that you put yourself on the back burner, but just good, honest, timely communication. It's very important in loving someone. Oh, and courage. It takes a great amount of courage to love fully, completely. Oh, and humor. Humor has to be a part of loving. That's good enough for now. There are other things too. How about you?
I think you said it so well. I mean, yeah, communication, openness, vulnerability, honesty. Yeah, holding multiple things at the same time. So much love can bring so much pain, but understanding that and risking it anyway. Yes to listening, yes to generosity, and yes to acts of kindness. Actions that show love, like taking initiative, making meals, sharing movie recommendations based on what you hear your loved one likes, remembering that they might have had a hard day and checking in, saying I love you, expressing all the things and ways in which you care and are appreciative, like I love making things with you, Mom.
We really do create beautifully together.
Yes.
Yes. Red and yellow and pink and green, purple and orange and blue. We can sing a rainbow, sing a rainbow. I'm singing a rainbow for you. Listen with our hearts, listen with our hearts and sing everything we see. We can sing a rainbow, sing a rainbow. Sometime will you sing a rainbow with me? I love you.
I love you.
cocoons. When I was a boy, my friend and I were excited to watch a butterfly fight to escape its cocoon. It fought for the longest time and appeared as though it would lose its battle while fighting to escape. My friend suggested we help it so it wouldn't stay trapped. My dad heard our discussion and intervened immediately, telling us not to touch it. He took the time to explain to us that there is a special kind of fluid inside the butterfly that is pumped into the butterfly's wings during its struggle to escape, and while flapping its wings up and down until the fluid hardens in the sunlight. He said that if we had helped it, the wings would never completely unfold. The fluid wouldn't get where it's supposed to, but would harden anyway, and the butterfly would die, a cripple. We were both kind of shocked that we had almost called it tragedy while trying to be helpful. Probably for that reason, this story has always stuck with me. And I got to thinking, when it comes to breakout experiences, unlike bugs, people get do-overs and second chances. Have you ever noticed how exasperated people get when they help a loved one out of a jam only to experience watching the helped person recreate a similar problem over and over again? I've come to believe that there is a very important difference between being supportive of a person's good efforts or jumping in and doing the work for them. Kind of like going to the gym to work out and wondering why they don't get strong. Or worse, getting mad at them for not improving in ways that we have robbed them of accomplishing for themselves. Over the years, I've noticed that the struggles I've worked through have much greater meaning for me than the time someone codependently rushed in and robbed me of the work I needed to do in order to become a strong and capable person. For this reason, when appropriate, there have been times I've actually refused help, making my would-be benefactor angry, accusing me of being ungrateful or refusing their expression of love. You know that's manipulation, right? Look, I don't need a helper making excuses for me or bailing me out. In a sense, making me weak and dependent by breaking my cocoon for me. Cocoons are created and recreated for a lot of reasons, often as a defense mechanism, like a survival technique, and a deep-seated need within all of us to do our own breaking out. Here's how I built my cocoon. As a teenager, I escaped the dysfunction of home life with lots and lots of drugs. I started smoking because I knew I wouldn't live as long if I did. And as a soldier in Vietnam, I escaped into the fantasy world of religion, where the realities of everything happening around me took a back seat to something I had absolutely no evidence for. Later, over many years, I found solace in little sips of alcohol, just enough to take the edge off, just enough to lessen the importance of things in my life that needed fixing, and, like religion, provided a false sense of security, safety, and accomplishment. By adopting all of these survival techniques, I created quite a formidable and protective cocoon around myself. The breakout. Eventually, I came to a point in my life where I felt the need to just escape everything. At first, I misinterpreted the impulse. I thought I finally wanted to end a sad existence, a poor excuse for a life where, according to some, including me, was never quite done right. The turning point. The day everything came to a head was the day I finally faced my service-connected PTSD and a string of other past traumas I'd been escaping from all these years. Along the way, a wise psychologist guided me to a place where I had to ask myself two important questions. One, what makes me look forward with enthusiasm to waking up every day? Two, what makes me want to never wake up again? When the answers to these two questions came flooding in, the clarity I discovered was amazing, and my fight began. The work of breaking out of old patterns and leaving behind the discarded cocoon of people, habits, and situations that did not support a life worth waking up to was where I discovered my own inner strength and worth. So, like the butterfly, it was really hard letting go of everything that wasn't who and what I really am, but it was definitely worth it.
I'm 6 years old. We just moved to a new apartment. It's too expensive, and it's all my fault we're here. By then, I had already learned to manipulate my mom, Thelma, into giving me whatever I thought I needed at the time. It came at a price. We lived on a financial roller coaster. My mother worked day and night in an attempt to take care of us. In return, maybe even to lessen the guilt, I took care of her. Years later, she needs a chair. We find a chair at Macy's. "It's perfect," she says, "if I put a cushion under my butt." If it needs a cushion, it's not the right chair. We find another chair. She feels it's too expensive. "I'm just going to die anyway. I don't want to spend this much money on a chair. I want you to have the money. It's your money." It wasn't my money. It was hers. This was always her attitude. "Forget about the money. Do you like the chair?" "Yeah, but my foot hurts." "Because of the chair?" "No, it's been hurting for over a week. I have an infection in my toe." The toe looked gangrenous. Her foot smells like a mouse had crawled into her shoe and died. It's time to care for her feet. It looks like no one has washed or touched her feet in years. I soak her feet. I clean them, peeling off layers of dead skin. Yuck. This was the pattern of our lives together. She would ask for my help, I would give it, and if the outcome was bad, it was my fault. This continued to the end, when she asked yet again for one final favor. And I helped. She passed on November 10th, 1989. I think I made the right choice for her, but I still wonder if it was for the wrong reasons.
My name is Erlene Gleisner, and I'm doing my monologue titled The Sign. The year was 2011, and the month was July. The event was that I was walking around and around my fully packed car. I couldn't get in it. This car was filled with 500 Native American themed items, beaded earrings, keychains, quilts, and enough camping gear for 2 separate 10-day camping events, one in South Dakota and one in Manitoba, plus wedding presents and things for a Gleisner family reunion in Wisconsin. And I couldn't get in the car. Finally, I went and called my friend in New Mexico. "Joanne, I can't get in the car." "Are you scared?" "No, but if I get in the car all by myself, that means it's real, that Yuak is dead, and I'm on my own, and I've never driven all the way back across the country all by myself, and I don't want to." "Erlene, you promised him that you would close down his life in the traditional Lakota way. And you have all the giveaway presents, you have all the things that you have to return, you've made all these plans. Get your big girl panties on, get in the car, and I'll meet you in Manitoba." Whenever my friend calls me on something and mentions my big girl panties, I have a tendency to have this vision of a little red tutu. So to make it stronger and more courageous, I started visually imagining more rhinestones and little white bows on it, and I got myself together, locked the house, and got in the car. And that was the first day. Also on that first day, over in Grass Valley, I had a flat tire. Now that nail wasn't going into the tire, that nail was coming out of the tire, and how that happened, I don't know, I really wasn't paying attention. Fortunately, I had some sort of a guardian angel arrive and get me to a Les Schwab, and within 2 hours I was on the road for only $25. First day. Second day, I'm traveling along in traffic, and I'm a little too close to a big 4-rig mail truck, and a tire blows, and it's coming at me, and I'm so close I can't swerve to either side, so I kind of straddle it with my wheels, and it goes underneath, and it dislodges the oil pan. Well, fortunately, my late husband always had baling wire in the back of the car, so I dug it out, and I wired that thing back together again, and took back off in kind of a daze, like, oh my God, what else can happen? Well, day 3, I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a construction site, and I'm listening to the juicy part of a Janet Ivanovich audiobook. So I drive through, and I hear a siren, and out of nowhere is this highway patrol car. Well, I think I'm lucky because it's a woman, and she comes up taking the information, and I just burst into tears. It's this trip I have to make, and I'm so sorry. I won't do it again, and my husband died, and I have to do this trip, and it's just a mess. Well, she listened, handed me the ticket, and said, you know, you're pretty upset. You need to sit by the side of the road. Get yourself together before you continue on your trip. I was mad. I got myself off to the side of the road, and I started stomping around the car again. Damn, I don't want that. I don't deserve that ticket. She shouldn't have given that to me. Damn, why did my husband have to die? Why did the solar panels collapse? Why did the batteries go bad? Everything's happening to me. This is just, I don't want to do this trip. And on, I ranted and raved, and finally, I got quiet. And when I finally got quiet, in the silence, I heard a voice. And the voice said, this trip really isn't for your husband. This trip is for you, like a vision quest. You have been out of sorts for a long time. Now is your chance to learn how to put it back together. Okay, voice, I said, but I need a sign. I need a concrete sign rather than some voice coming out of the atmosphere. I need something that'll tell me what it is I'm supposed to learn on this trip. I didn't hear anything more. So I got myself together, got back in the car, stayed within the speed limit, getting back on the highway, and I saw in the distance a sign coming at me, or I was going directly at it, whichever way. And my body chilled when I got closer, and I could read the words. It said, pay attention or pay the price. Thank you.
All right, this story is called The Reset Button, and it's a story about me getting sick and getting well again. And it happened about 8 years ago when I wasn't making very healthy choices in life, and I found myself very, very sick with no idea of what to do about it. I asked my neighbor for help, and she dropped me off at the emergency room near where I was living in Huntington Park, California, which is a very low income area and not a very credible hospital. In that hospital, the emergency room, they left me waiting for a long time, and when they did call me, I couldn't walk to get up and answer them, so I waved and I said, I'm over here, and they came and got me and put me in to a room and determined that I had a pneumonia. After about 3 days of listening to the patients next to me crying and in pain and no one helping them, and being served really bad food and being treated poorly by the staff for not wanting to eat that food, I called my friend back, and she came and picked me up and took me to a new hospital that had just been built where I grew up in Downey, California. After a few days, the people at the hospital determined I had endocarditis, which is an abscess on your heart valve. They were recommending that I have a valve replacement surgery, and that it would be done in the Hollywood facility of Kaiser, where I was born, the same hospital. So I was transferred, and awaiting the surgery was the hardest month of my life. A month, I thought I was gonna die. A month, I had to accept my mortality. I thought that everything I had lived up until that point and all those bad choices was all I was ever gonna get to make. That was it. My dad came to see me on a Sunday, and he looked sad, and he said that a lady at his church had a daughter with the same condition as me last Sunday. And this Sunday, she didn't have a daughter anymore. Her daughter had passed away. Accepting my mortality and realizing that I might die, and then living again and coming out of the hospital, made me realize that life is short. You only get one chance to make your choices. And I was deeply grateful for having a second chance. So grateful that even just the most simple meal with my mom and my kids after I got out of the hospital, we ate chili dogs, and I cried. I was just weeping of gratitude to be alive, to see them, and to see the grass and the sky and the land and the earth. And ever since then, I've made better choices. And I think that the reset button got hit that day when I had my heart surgery at the same hospital that I was born in. Thank you.
Awakening. Do you remember me at all? Do you remember and feel just a little bit of shame? A tiny bit of regret? A twinge of embarrassment? I'd like to think so. But I doubt that you even think about that day, ever. And to be honest, I rarely do. But when I do, a white-hot rage floods through me, an indignance, an effrontery, and I am appalled. The cruelty appalls me. I am a woman deeply appalled by cruelty now. But then I was a girl, 14, and there was no rage, no indignance, no effrontery. There was only fear. No, terror and humiliation. And then there was survival. Survival. That still small voice inside me telling me calmly, urgently what to do next and next and next. First, swim like hell to the dock. Ignore the sound of his motorboat approaching. Then climb up on that dock and run. Run to a street where there are people. Then wave down a bus. Any bus. That bus. Ignore the sign on the front of that bus, coloreds only. See, it's stopping for you. Tell the driver as you climb on that you have no money. See how the woman in front puts a quarter in for you? The man behind her gets up to give you his seat. See how nobody minds that your clothes are dripping wet, that your blouse is badly torn, and you are crying? See how there is only kindness here, and you are safe. See how nobody minds that you are white. And so, Bobby Consolo, I learned a lot that day. I learned that the handsome boys, the smooth and oh so charming boys, can also be deceptive and deceitful and devoid of conscience, of empathy, can be unforgivably cruel. And I learned that there are some acts so cruel that you'd best spare even your mother from knowing about. And I learned that that still small voice inside me is my voice, and I can trust it, and I can adjust the volume. On that day, in 1957, when I was 14, I learned that colored people, black people, are not just the maids and chauffeurs and cooks of my wealthy girlfriends. And that there is something very wrong with coloreds only buses and bathrooms and water fountains and lunch counters and places to live. In 1957, where I lived in Miami Beach, black people, colored people, were prohibited by law from resting or residing where I lived. By law. Those compassionate colored people who so wonderfully welcomed me on their bus had to commute on that bus every day to their jobs as maids and chauffeurs and cooks in the homes of wealthy white people. They had to commute an hour and a half every morning, early in the morning, to get to those jobs, and another hour and a half every night, late at night, to get home, to the black ghetto of Miami, ironically known as Liberty City. In 1968, 11 years after my rape, and 7 years after I had moved to New York City, Richard Nixon held his convention in Miami Beach, and there were riots in Liberty City. I heard about it on the news. Burning and looting and destruction. The inevitable response to decades of relentless cruelty. The language of the unheard.
understand a word I'm saying, right? Okay. Welcome to this transformational time. I have a few snapshots of this time. Greetings. Hey, hi, Jack. Good to see you. Hi. Oh, you're not Jack. Sorry. Wow, it's hard to tell, isn't it? Ha! Oh. No, I'm not Helen. He thinks I'm Helen? No, I'm not Helen. Okay, see you. Stay safe. Shopping. I sure hope my cat appreciates what I'm doing for her. Grandmother Hell. I miss them so much. They keep changing. I haven't seen them in months. Grandmother Heaven, they're here. My daughter and her husband and the two little girls down from Washington State, where they have just been in Black Lives Matter caravans. And little Violet, trying to figure out what this is all about, senses that it is something that's not okay. Her sign that she writes, I miss my friends. Many cars with signs, Black Lives Matter, down the roads for several days in a small town in Washington. Violet has got more of the idea the second day, and her sign now says, it's not okay to be mean. So one day we went to the park. We went to Rec Grove with a beautiful, big, shading redwood trees, and we're playing hide and seek, and we're running around, and Sloan, who is 2, spies the playground, and we go running over, and of course it's all cordoned off with this orange net stuff, and she tries to get her leg up, but it's too high. She looks at it, she looks up at me, and she says, Grandma, do we have scissors? Thank you, trees. Thank you, air. Thank you, breathing everywhere. The oceans and the forests and the jungles and the plains, the butterflies and the bees and the polar bears, they're all calling to us. Nature is calling us out for being such a reckless, cruel species. We are hurting Mother Nature and we are hurting each other. The COVID is showing us. Our darkest selves, our dark side, especially us white people. We have to stand with the damage we've done. We have to listen to people who look not like us. We have to learn so much from each other and from people of color.
We have to learn so much about creating a whole new healthcare system that actually helps and works for everyone. COVID-19, the numbers are horrendous. The rest of the world is looking at us now, looking at us, not up to us. Our pants are down. And all the beauty, all the kindness, all the sharing and generosity and cooperating that we're seeing now is inspiring. The courage of our firefighters, of our essential workers, so much kindness and courage. People thinking creatively, thinking out of the box, like our teachers and our parents who are working with these boxes out of the box. How do we teach our children? So this COVID has, in its insistence that we need to stay in, our response to the system that says we have to stay in, we have to be safe, and we can listen then. What are our real values? What matters to us? Well, you know, there are two teams, the love team and the fear team. And with the love team, you're going to be scared some of the time, for sure. With the fear team, you're going to be scared all the time. So this is something that I do to help me stay on the love team. Be willing to look ridiculous. All right, stay safe, be kind, so long.
There's a song in my heart. Yes, everything comes down to music, a melody and a lyric. As in zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, my oh my, what a wonderful day. And Mom, throughout our childhood, her theme song was happy talking duck and happy talk. But our dad didn't fight in the South Pacific during World War II. He ended up being a POW in Germany for nearly 2 years. And my father, he was just shy of 6 feet tall. He weighed 160 pounds when he went off to the war. And because he contracted dysentery while he was in that POW camp, he came home an unrecognizable 105 pounds. So in his honor, since he was in Germany, Edelweiss, Edelweiss. And as a child of the 50s, I had an undiagnosed learning disability. Go figure. I could not concentrate. I never told anyone. I just dealt with the fact that I was always daydreaming, looking off in the distance, never able to concentrate. But when I would be concerned about it with certain grades, especially in math, I would come home and say, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. Before I met my husband, who was a wonderful man, my theme song was To Dream the Impossible Dream. And then we met and married, and it was up, up and away. And then Ronnie, my sweetheart, every day went off to work, and in our early marriage, I stayed home because we were having children. And when he walked through the door, our theme song was, hey, good looking, what you got cooking? we wanted to have children. And our theme song then was, we've got high hopes, we've got high hopes. And what do you know? It took us 2.5 years to get pregnant, but we had a wonderful bouncing baby boy. My parents' first grandchild. But for some reason, Mom didn't want and didn't come to the hospital to see her new firstborn grandson. And I know it was because Mom had for 15 years gone through several pregnancies and had birthed 4 daughters, and then finally she had a son. So when she didn't come to the hospital after my son was born, my theme song was, for Mom, it's my party and I'll cry if I want to. You would cry too if it happened to you. So yes, empathetic with Mom. But then when that brother of ours came along after 4 girls, finally a son, of course the Messiah on that July 1st afternoon was playing throughout the neighborhood. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Because of course it was a huge thrill for our father to finally have that boy. Well, I had this firstborn son. And for the first 2 weeks of his life, the kid was a great little boy. He was beautiful. But he did not sleep for 2 whole weeks. All he did was cry constantly. And I guess life was just too much for him to cope with. But okay, he cried a bunch. And all I could think was, don't cry out loud! Because it was really tough. But after 2 weeks, miraculously, he began a schedule sleeping from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So, hey, life was but a dream. And then he had this little mobile that hung over his bed, of course. It was little airplanes. And the song was, fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. And then we had our precious little girl. Thank you. We had our boy and our girl. And her little mobile was lambs. Go figure. And it was, Mary had a little lamb. Then as the kids got a little older, one of their favorite treats was chocolate milk. And I would put the milk and the Hershey syrup in this shaking cup that they could walk around shaking. And always we sang as they marched around the kitchen, shake, 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 shake your noodle, ah, 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 oh. And then, as an homage to one of our other monologuists, I remembered back in the late 70s, early 80s, there weren't really mandatory seatbelts in cars. And my children would, stand up in the back seat and just position themselves in such a way so that hopefully they wouldn't go flying through the window if I had to slam on the brakes. But the theme song was, hold on, hold on, hold on, as we went careening around corners. And overall, our life was, love is a many splendid thing. But then adolescence appeared and reigned. And it was, take out the paper and the trash, which sometimes didn't meet with acquiescence. And my theme song for quite a while was, kids, da 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 da. And you know the rest of that song. But then they grew up, went to college, and we became empty nesters. At last, and then as we aged, our parents definitely aged, and life is life, they passed away. And appropriately, it was time for Ave enjoyed several years of that empty nest and just being a couple. Ronnie retired, but after a few years, he got sick. He was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It was in his brain. It was in several areas of his body. And my theme song at that point became, "As long as he needs me." Then, as he was dying, we talked, and it became, "You'll never walk alone." And then, of course, he died. And it was, "And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make." Grief took hold, and it was strong, stronger than I was, and it endured for 10 long, lonesome years. And I was crazy, crazy for feeling so lonely. But then the overwhelming time was over, and the beat goes on, and the beat goes on. Now I'm done. I'm getting ready to don my mask and go on out there to the grocery store, pick up a couple of things. And as I head into the store, always it's food, glorious food. And I encourage you to think musically.
Hey there! Oh, am I the only one on? Oh good, there's Lizard. Okay, looks like we're all on. Good! Welcome to our Zoomies meeting. I am Hunter, and I am wise in dog years, and my pack and I want to share some advice to you, our dear human friends. I guess I'll start. They say that man's best friend is a dog, and I'm here to tell you that is so true. Right now, you cannot hug each other much, so it is totally fine to hug us more and more. We love it. And you will too. They say that every dog has its day, but I say that every day is a dog day. Hey Lizard, have anything you want to add?
Hi, I'm Lizzie Lizard. I am a love dog. I was born happy, and I want to share my message of peace, love, and happiness. In fact, I'm a firm believer that all you need is love. I love you, I love you, I love you. And don't worry, be happy.
Hi, I'm Mickey. I'm a Papillon butterfly dog. I was supposed to be a show dog. Could have been a contender, but I got dealt a bad card and could not compete. Did I let that get me down? No! What could be better than living with my pack and living a dog's life? I say, try and see the positive in all things, and you will start to feel better right away. Oh, and don't listen to Trixie. She's cray-cray. Hi, it's Trixie, the real leader of the pack. Don't tell Hunter. I am 5 pounds of energy and proud of it. I strut around like I own the place, 'cause I do. I'm a trickster and all about the fun. If you are in the dumps, try getting some exercise or chase something. Before you know it, you'll feel amazing.
Well, that about wraps up our meeting for today. I think the main message here is to live in the now like we do. Remember to play, and love, and eat lots of treats. Oh, and don't forget to hug and kiss us. We really do love it, and we know you will too. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye!